Hello everyone, I am Rajakumar Guduru and I welcome you all for today's session on note making. Well, you all make notes when you read a text, when you prepare for examinations, don't you? One of the most important questions that I pose to second language learners is, do you all make notes when you read a text? When I ask them, some students say that well, I make notes, but I don't know how to make I don't know how to make effective notes. Some students answer that they say that they make notes, but they are lost and confused. Yet some other students say that they are not aware of good note making skills or tips. Some other students say that they make a very large number of notes, to that extent that they end up rewriting the entire text. And yet some other students told me that they have problems of making use of the notes that they have used. Some other students say that they are not good at organizing notes that they have made. So these are some of the problems that the second language learners face mostly when they are trying to make notes, when they are reading a text, when they read a lesson or prepare for the examinations, or before revising or before writing an assignment. So in this session, we will focus on some of the important aspects of note making, good note making skills. Are you all ready? Good. Note making is an advanced writing skill, and it has very number of practical reasons and uses. Note making helps us to remember the text that we are reading. It also helps us to revise the text, the lesson, or the lesson that we are preparing for the examinations. So note making skills are very essential before we prepare for any examination or any sort of preparatory exams. So note making skill is not so easy, but it is very complex skill because it involves another number of skills. For example, note making involves a careful reading plan, note writing techniques, text reduction devices, and organizing techniques, and finally methods of sequencing. These are different skill sets that are involved in effective note making. Therefore, second language learners find it a bit complex and a bit difficult. However, effective note making skills is very crucial in an academic career. Well, effective note making is a key writing skill, and it has a number of practical uses. They can help us record or map what we are reading, and also it also helps us to recall and understand the text that we are attempting. However, note making is a very complex activity, as I told you, but we have to keep a watch on this. The objectives of the lesson are to help learners to identify and understand central idea and supporting details of a reading text. Help learners to understand, analyze the text better. Help learners to remember the information they have read or gathered. Facilitate learners to make quick revision before exams or writing assignments. Help learners to condense large text into short and useful. Help learners to organize notes and that they have made or gathered. So these are some of the objectives of today's lesson. The lesson will deal with the following aspects. Number 1, what is note making? Number 2, how to make good notes. Number 3, uses of note making. Number 4, types of note making. Number 5, techniques of note making. Number 6, organizing notes. Number 7, tips for effective note making. Number 8, practice in making notes. So these are the summary of today's lesson. what is note making? The meaning of the word note is a brief written record as an aid to memory. In other words, note making can be defined as a systematic method of writing down quickly, briefly and clearly the important points of a reading text. Note making is a productive skill which integrates both reading and writing skills. Let us look into some of the slight differences of note making and note taking. Firstly, note making. While reading a text or printed materials, we make notes. And also, when we prepare for exams or before writing assignments or essays, we make notes. Note making has a long-term utility. For example, beginning of the semester, we read texts and we try to prepare for the examination and we make notes and we use them by the end of the semester. We revise it and use it by the end of the semester. So therefore, it has a long-term utility. And also, while making notes, we generate our own ideas. We don't rewrite what is found in the textbook. So we generate our own ideas. These are some of the crucial characteristics of note making. Now let us look into what is note taking. Well, note taking happens while we are listening to a speech or a lecture. Okay, and during a telephone conversation, we also take notes. For example, your friend calls you and asks for somebody else in the office. And when you say that, oh, I'm sorry, he's not here, can you give me a message? Then we take down the notes. All right? Well, and this note taking is a very short-term utility. It has a very short-term utility. Once you pass on the message, then you no more remember. Therefore, it's very short in duration. And also, when we take notes, we reproduce the same ideas. Okay, we don't generate our own ideas and add something new and then pass it on to the person. No. When we take a message, we take down the notes as it is, and then we pass it on. Therefore, it is a very short-term utility and just reproducing the same ideas. So these are a few slight differences between note making and note taking. Having heard about differences note making and note taking, now let us look into how to make good notes. There are a few steps to follow. Step 1, the students are required to read a passage to get a gist of the passage, to know what it is all about or what the theme is. It's very important to understand the text first of all, before we make any notes. Step 2, the main idea or the central theme of the passage should be found out. So when we read the text, the central theme, what is the central theme of the passage we are reading about? That has to be found out. Step 3, the important points related to the main theme are noted. So once you understand the main theme of the passage, okay, just you then jot down the important or supporting details of the main theme. That is step 3. And step 4 involves add the sub-points which supplement the main points, or there is no need to give examples here. Once you found out the supporting details, you also add you also supplement some sort of other details, subsections. Here we don't have to give any sort of big examples because remember, we are making notes in short. And step 5, pay attention to the way you would like to present the notes. There is a proper format for note making. You have to follow it. There is a particular format in which we make notes. Okay, it depends on the style you choose. Therefore, we have to strictly follow certain format when we are making notes. Step 6, do not write full sentences and use abbreviations wherever necessary. You are all aware of abbreviations, don't you? Okay, we use short forms instead of writing the lengthy words or lengthy sentences just to help us remember. When we use abbreviations, it helps us to remember very easily and quickly, and it also helps us to recall the text we want to. That is the use of using abbreviations, very important. And finally, use proper indentation to present the notes. When we present notes systematically, we have to see that indentation is in place. The space between the lines, the space from the margin when we move the subpoint, main points, subpoints, and then further subpoints. The space is very important because the eye observes the space and then it will be very catchy, otherwise we'll be confused what is which is a real point. Okay, it's very, very important. These are the 7 steps which are very important in making notes. Uses of note making. Note making is more intellectual task than note taking because it involves selecting the text, it involves analyzing the text, it also involves summarizing the text. Note making is therefore an active skill. The most important use of note making is that it forces us to think because we have to make decisions about what we write. So it forces us to think well. Number 2 is it helps us to pay attention to what we are reading. So attention, it draws our attention to the text we are reading. Number 3, it assists us to understand new material, and if the notes are organized in our own way and in our own words. So it assists us to understand the new material that we are reading in our own way. Okay, it's very important. 4th, it helps us to concentrate. That's very important when we are making notes. Okay, and the 5th one is it helps us to remember more information. That is the ultimate purpose of making notes. Okay, remember more. And 6th one is it makes it easier to distinguish between important issues and details. Note making skills also helps us to see clearly what is the main theme, what are the supporting details. That distinction has to be clear before we sit down to make notes. So it helps us to see that distinction very clearly. And it also provides a permanent record. It's not that just you forget, you make notes and then you forget it. Then it doesn't serve the purpose. As I told you, I'm telling it to you again that at the beginning of the semester, we make notes and it's a continuous process, and till the end of the semester, we revise it, we get back to it, and then we always update it, and then finally we use it during our examinations in order to prepare essays, in order to write assignments, and number of other uses. And finally, note making facilitates learning. How? By helping us to understand the message that we are reading, the text that we are reading. Okay? And it also helps us to reflect on, review our notes. It's a very important point again. It helps us to review and reflect on our notes. So these are the few practical uses of note making skills. Types of note making. There are a number of note making styles. Okay. Number 1 is linear notes. Linear notes making is a very common tendency among the learners. It's a very common thing. We all of us tend to make linear notes. And it includes lots of words and phrases, or sometimes sentences too. And some way we have bullets and relevant symbols. When we are making linear notes, we use lots of symbols and bullets sometimes. Don't we use that? Yes, we do, very much. So Linear note making is a very common thing among us. For example, I have read a text and I am making notes. Point 1, the main theme. Point 1.1, subtopic. Point 1.2, second subpoint. 1.3, third subpoint. And number 2, the second main topic or the heading. And again 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. It's a very linear way of making notes. Or some people use that Roman number 1 and then A, B, C for subpoints. Roman number 2 for another main heading and then again subpoints A, B, C. So this is a very common thing among the students. The second one is mind map notes. Have you heard about this? Mind map notes. It seems very interesting, isn't it? Okay. It is a visual way of capturing or presenting notes. Okay. And it allows us to show hierarchies of information. Okay. When we are reading a text, we read different texts differently. Okay. And when there is a sort of hierarchy in the text, okay, then we present one thing on the top and the second position, third position, and then come down. So there is a hierarchy the way in which we present. And it also shows different bits of information as they are connected. When we show one after the other, which means that bits and pieces of information are connected one after the other. And it also helps organizing information. We can clearly see that when we represent notes in hierarchical forms, in a hierarchy form, and we see the clear line of thought, and then it helps us to organize a text. So this is mind mapping notes. Number 3 is flowchart notes. Well, flowchart notes helps us to show a sequence of events, one after the other. And it also shows a cause and effect relationship. Okay, this is a cause and this is the effect, or this is the effect and this is the cause. So it shows the cause and relationship, cause and effect relationship. And flowchart notes are also very useful when taking notes from reading and also helpful for exam revision. It's very important, flowchart notes. Okay? Now let us look at the example here. For example, listen to lectures or read. That's where we start our reading text, and then move on to make notes, then come down. Do my notes make sense? This is a question we ask. Then we move on to get on with assignments, and then if it is no, then we move on to improve note making skills, and then it goes back to making notes. Okay, this is a flowchart notes. And fourth one is a table notes, a very common thing again. Table notes are useful for comparing things. When we are comparing two things, then we can put in two tables, table A and table B, plus points and minus points. You see, we can see the distinction very clearly. And table notes are also very helpful for comparing different writers' perspectives on certain themes. Writers' perspectives here. We can clearly divide them into two groups. And table notes are also useful for comparing different theories. Theory 1, theory 2, what are the plus points, what are the minus points, or what are the differences. You can represent them in a table form. And table notes also allow us to look at contrasting bits of information together. Okay, plus points this side, left side, and minus points on the right side. So one yes and the other one no. So it helps us to look into see clearly the bits and pieces of contrasting information at the same place. So these are some of the uses of table notes. Well, we can make our notes and organize them based on the nature of information or the text or the kind of text we read. Okay? And for example, look at the table below for some guidelines on how to organize notes. On the one side, nature of information in the text or kind of text. On the other side, the diagrammatic form in which notes can be organized. For example, take one, description of a substance. We can represent it in linear notes, by linear notes. Number two, you take a description of processes. We can show it by a flow diagram or a flow chart. Number three, narrative description, a linear notes again. And number four, a classification information, a tree diagram. And number five, comparative description, a table notes, or we can just represent it in the form of a list. And number six is contrastive description. Again, you can come up with a table or a list. And finally, a figurative information, again a table notes or a list of information, or list. We can make the notes in the form of a list. So these are some of the ways and means of going about organizing and making notes in different forms. Well, whichever format we use for note making, it should help us ultimately to remember and review the notes at the later point of time, and also read and reread them easily on a regular basis. It should help us to reread the notes on a regular basis. It also should help us to expand and develop upon them at a later point of time. And finally, it should help us to file them or record them or organize them in a proper way. So if you are comfortable with linear notes, go ahead. If you are comfortable with making a table notes, go ahead. But remember, it all depends on the text also. If it is a descriptive, if it is a narrative, if it shows a sort of contrastive information, according to that, we use different kinds of notes. Organizing notes. Having spent a considerable amount of time making notes, the next important point is how to organize the notes that we have made. It's a very important thing. Otherwise, all our efforts of note making goes waste. We wouldn't want that to happen. Well, it will also save our time. We don't have to make notes again and again on the same topic. Therefore, organizing notes that we have made is a very important thing. Now, there are some tips to organize notes well. Number one is keep all notes on the same subject or topic together. If you are writing on one subject, keep all the note making material on that particular subject together. Okay? If you fixed one book with for one subject and don't bring in the other subject note in the same book, so you will get confused, you will mess up with sort of making notes. All right. Second point is use a color coding files and color coding chits like this to mark the notes and to act as a bookmarks. Okay, that's very important thing. Suppose you reading on the 30th page and you want to stop it for today and just use a color coding folders like this or chits like this and just make a small note and keep it there. And you come back again and then you resume from there. It will help you. And then number the page and create a contents page in your short storage file. It's very important. When you have a book in your hand, okay, note making book, at the first page should be that a contents page. It's very important. You see, every book has a contents page, and you know immediately you go to the page number and then you go back to the particular section you want to refer to. So also note making book should be organized in that manner. It's very essential. And above all, keep the storage system simple. The notes or system, if you want to if you want to write notes or if you want to make notes on the system, on the computer, you must keep it very simple. And if you are using a computer to record your notes, remember to always back up your work. It many times happen. Just before the exam, the computer crashes or sort of the file gets corrupted because of the viruses, and then we lose all the notes that we have made. And we feel very bad finally. That shouldn't happen. Therefore, if you are making notes on your computer, well, it's a good idea, but always keep a backup of your files. Maybe you can mail it to yourself or mail it to your friend, all right? Or you can write it in a CD form or in a pen drive. So these are some of the backup systems you can use. And finally, keep a very good record of bibliographic details to access it quickly again. Do we do that? Suppose you've taken some notes, you made 1 or 2 notes from a particular book, and later when you are revising it, going back to it to develop on it, and you don't know where you have got these ideas from, where you made these notes from. So, but once you have noted all the bibliographic details of that particular note, then it's very easy for us to go back to that and then retrieve the information, go back to that and then check it again for a future use, for a better understanding, and then we can improve on that. Therefore, bibliographic details are very, very essential at this point of time. So these are some of the tips that help us to organize our notes. Well, now let us look into one example. The topic is our agriculture. India is an agricultural country. Out of every 100 Indians, about 70 make their living through agriculture. Agriculture gives us food, cotton for our clothes, raw materials like jute and sugarcane for our industries, and food for cattle. That is why, for thousands of years, people all over the world, especially the people of our country, have been involved in agriculture. India has large fertile plains which are good for cultivation. Some of these fertile areas are A. the northern fertile plain, B. the large deltas of the coastal plains, C. parts of the plateau region. All these areas together constitute about half of the total area of our country. Rice, wheat, millets, cotton, jute, sugarcane and tea are the chief crops grown here. So this is a passage that we have read. Now let us make notes on this particular passage. Let's make it in a bullet points, okay? Number 1 point could be India, comma, agri, full stop, country. So when I say agri, I'm using an abbreviation here, a short form. Number 2, point number 2, 70% live through agri. So which means we understand that immediately 70% of the population in India lives through agriculture. And number 3rd point, agri, prod, dash, food, cotton, jute, which means agricultural products are food, cotton, jute. And the 4th point, fertile plains in India, dash, and then sub points, 1, northern fertile plain, coastal plain and part of plateau region. These are 3 sub points that come under the main fertile plains in India. And finally, chief crops, rice, millets, wheat, cotton, jute, etc. So this is how we organize, this is how we make notes, main points and then sub points. And in between we use a number of abbreviations, number of symbols. Sometimes it's very essential.